Start. So that I know this is where I start from.
That's the cue.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Not Again Yamali, a podcast where we have open and mentor like conversations with my friends, mentors, and guests who are not only killing it in their respective careers and fields, but are leading people authentically. Which means recognizing the countless mistakes that they've made and the learning moments, the doubts that creep in, and the values that drive decision making. Now, I'm your host, Yamali. I'm an MBA graduate with admits from Rice, INSEAD, and ISB. Now, I've had my previous experience working in tech and venture capital, while also being a global nonprofit founder and a former model. You see, I've had a fair share of finding myself. Now, today's episode of Not Again Yamali is extra special because I'm chatting with Pavan Jayanti, who is a principal product manager at Amazon Seattle and also an alum of IIM Bangalore. Now, you see, Pavan and I, we go back to our days way back in Flipkart and startups. So this conversation feels as personal as it is insightful. Pavan opens up about his big leap from startups to Amazon, sharing surprises, adjustments, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Now, he also talks about transitioning from operations to product management, what changed, what remained the same, and what he wished he knew earlier. Now, if you've ever wondered what happens or making big, bold career moves, or what really is life at Amazon is like, so one Amazon employee to another Amazon employee, this episode is just for you to listen. So I can't wait for you to get started.
I don't want to be. But,
You don't want to be a tech person?
I mean, fine. Look like that, it's fine. I'm not. I'm not actively trying to look like that, but yeah, I think it's fine.
So we start. So I know this. If your life had a catchphrase that you would say at the end of every day, what would that be?
Thank God it's. I mean, at the end of the day, what can you say? You get ready to sleep, and I think that's what I think I can say.
Is that something that you say every day right now?
I mean, I don't think of saying it, but now if I have to think of what I will say, maybe that's what I will say.
Thank God it's over. If you had to impersonate, you've lived in Seattle
Yeah.
and you've been in California multiple times, and you know people there. So if you could impersonate between Seattle and the California accent, or the the most heard phrase for you, because there could be multiple other phrases that people say, but you wouldn't have heard it, right? Different generation talk. So, how would you do that?
In the American accent? Is
Yeah,
that what?
yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't know if I can.
You can give it a try. And as
No, I'm about to say, like, I don't know if I can actually recognize the difference. It all sounds the same to me. But I think, yeah, I'm not in terms of the accent, but I can tell you, like, the differences between how someone in Seattle speaks.
okay, please tell me.
So I think when you're in Seattle, you go around, meet people. I mean, specifically talking of people with the same background who have come from India, moved. I think over here, people are more like, hey, what's happening to your green card? When's your EV1? And all of that stuff. So, California, hey, which car do you drive? Huh? Okay. You own a Tesla. Whatever. Right? So, I think you can see the difference, but yeah, I think it's mostly the conversations between folks over here and there. And accent wise, I don't know. Like, I have not actively thought about it. So, and I don't.
His accent is easy to pick up, no?
Which one?
Californian accent.
No, I know someone from California
Huh.
whose accent is very hard for me to pick up. So,
Is this an easier accent to pick up?
I think so. At least I feel so because I've been working with folks over here for quite some time. Or maybe this is my, or you can say since I've been with Amazon and people I've been working with were all based in Seattle.
Yeah.
I understand this much better than maybe California.
Do you have like a work accent that you use?
No.
No.
I didn't try, or maybe I don't know if that's something involuntary that comes up.
Usually, the minute they're off from the work call, it goes into a different. And then when they're work call, they're all like, all right. Hey, XYZ. Hey, Pavan. So, how's your day been? How's it going? And then they're like, yeah.
Okay. No, I don't think I have a work accent, or maybe I don't know.
You know,
Someone will tell me.
someone would probably have to say, this
Yeah.
is your work accent.
Maybe the only thing I can say is, "Hey, what's up?" I think if that doesn't sound like anything from India, then I think that's what you can say, like something I picked up.
You definitely didn't say that. Yeah, what's
maybe.
up, though? Not at all.
Sometimes I don't know what people say, like "What's up" or "WhatsApp" or whatever. I don't know how they pronounce it, but
It's like, hey, how's it going?
hey, how's it going? Yeah.
Yeah. Or hey, how you been? I don't think that ever comes up. I've always heard, hey, how's it going?
How's it going? How's it going comes up.
Yes, this is like you just put a drag or a nod
Yeah.
and then you just keep walking towards. If you had to be famous for something totally unrelated to your career,
Okay.
what would that be? Or what would you have it to be?
Okay. If I can wish for something, maybe
Yeah. I mean, if it's correct.
it's not connected to my career. Maybe I would like to pick up my guitar and become a good guitarist, but I don't know. I don't
Like,
think
do you play the guitar?
I play. I know some songs which I keep playing because I know them, but that's I don't actively look at like learning new things. But I mean, new things on the guitar. But yeah, old ones I like, so I play. That's about it.
That I didn't know that you play. Did you play like in college and then you picked it up later?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, it was more like maybe, I mean, nothing in a concert or a rock band or whatever, but yeah, it's something that could pass off for like maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I can engage a
Entertain
crowd.
people.
Engage a crowd. I don't say entertain. I mean, either ways, it's entertainment. Yeah.
Have you ever tried playing over here? Like, if you ever taken your guitar at any of these public squares and just randomly just started playing?
Oh, no. No.
Why?
No, I'm not that outgoing, I think.
What's your favorite productivity hack or a habit that you absolutely swear by?
Productivity hack. I think waking up early.
Yeah,
I think that helps.
that helps.
That helps. And I mean, I'm on the West Coast, but ideally on the East Coast, that would be like the best possible thing because you have 3 to 4 hours before
Yeah,
Seattle wakes up.
right.
So, but yeah, even over here, I mean, I generally wake up pretty early. Not pretty early, but somewhere in the
What's
5:30,
early?
6-ish range.
Oh, okay.
So by 7, I'm like done, and I think I have that half an hour before my kid wakes up. So, and I have to get him ready for school. But that half an hour, I think, is good. Like you can finish off some of the work stuff or
Yeah.
something else, like whatever you want to do. There's no, yeah, there's no one to disturb or no one to do something else.
Well, talking about work, what do you do for a living? Well, I know what you do, but then.
For the record. Yeah. So I work with Amazon as a product manager in the last mile routing optimizations.
Yeah. So, wait, so there is like layers and hierarchies to it, right?
Yeah.
So you started off as a product manager, or are you like at the principal level or at
So I'm currently a principal product manager. I mean, are you talking of the different parts of the journey which I had? Is that?
No, I was just asking on the product manager side.
Yeah.
What layers are there? Hierarchies.
Oh, okay. There is a product manager, then there will be a senior product manager, and then there's principal product manager, and then you go towards the managerial route of either becoming a people manager with the senior manager as the title. Then, I mean, one level up will be a director who handles both product and tech.
Oh, okay. You went from, let's let's just talk about how you went from working with very fast growing startups, which was Flipkart back in India, then you moved on to CureFit, and then it's Amazon. I mean, you've been in Amazon before, but then you came back to Amazon. So if you were to look back at it, one is, how would you say what led you to these shifts? Like you went from startup, and then you came back to a big and gigantic MNC, right? So there are these nodes of point that made you think like, okay, now's the time that I want to go back from a startup to an MNC.
Uh, yeah, I think so. Some of it was planned, some of it was unplanned, I would say.
Okay.
So when I joined Flipkart, this was way back in 2014.
Right.
So it's been like around 10 years where so there it was more about exploratory e-commerce was just picking up in India. And again, I maybe just joined prior to the entire, you can say the boom when people were hiring left, right and center, right? I joined prior to that. So Flipkart was through one of my friends when he knew that there was a team that's looking for someone with sort of interest in operations. Again, I was at IBM consulting before Flipkart, so it had got nothing to do with like what I was interviewing for, but it's purely based on some maybe I don't know what this or it's potential or you can say interest or whatever, right?
It's
Right?
what they say, like, and when you're pitching to an investor, you're not investing in the person, but you're investing in the potential. You're pitching on your potential. You're not pitching your product.
I think so, and I'm grateful for that opportunity because I wasn't sure as to like how to move from or how to think about my career into the future when Flipkart happened. So I think that was the first lucky break I can say which I
And how
got
old were you?
when I joined Flipkart.
Yeah.
Was 26 something.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, old enough.
Okay. No, I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so there it worked out. So in Flipkart again, I think Flipkart was experimenting with quite a lot of stuff at that time. 2014. That was the first big billion day. I know it's become pretty big right now, but
Yeah.
that was the time when we were, in fact, brainstorming about big billion days on how to do it and all from a last mile standpoint. So I was a part of a team which was looking more into the future of how to enable growth for Flipkart, non-linear growth for Flipkart, and like 5x, can we do 20x of the volume that we were doing? So there were questions like that which we were trying to answer. And then this role slowly transitioned from like thoughts into execution. Like, how are we going to bring in newer models into deliveries ecosystem? How do we ensure that the last mile scaled up non-linearly? So there was a team of folks who I was working with at that time, trying to figure out what are those different models and what's the most cost effective way for last mile delivery. So been there for like 3.5, 4 years, and then Amazon happened. So with Flipkart, I mean I was enjoying it definitely. I thought like with Amazon happening again, it came out of the blue, and I have a very bad habit of not being able to say no. So I, it just happened, and so the initial conversation with folks from Amazon. I mean, I was actually at that time. I think I was also interviewing with a couple of other orgs. Like there was Google that was happening, and there was I think I also interviewed with Facebook, but somewhere Amazon felt like. I mean, I generally have this sort of a philosophy when I make changes.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I think it's the same with everyone, where you would not want to make a lot of changes or introduce a lot of unknown variables when you make a change. So that meant like Amazon won over the other companies in terms of where my interest lay, because it was last mile, it was tech product, but it was last mile where I did not need to build more context than what was there, specifically because this was last mile for India. And like coming from Flipkart, it felt like maybe a natural transition. And the second thing which made me actually think about that was at some point of time I wanted international exposure, and Flipkart at that time maybe it could have happened, but at that time it felt like it was the right choice for me to think about Amazon as the, like, you can say, a logical next step.
Right.
And then, like, sticking to my habit, like when I spoke to some folks, I was in touch with people from my from Flipkart days. So then again, I was actually conflicted between like doing a startup versus working in MNC. I mean, it has always been a constant
Yeah.
struggle. Like,
Yeah.
hey, it's good over here. It's giving
Right.
me opportunities which I wanted. So there are two things which you want. So you don't know which of them. So I was like, maybe let me try my hand at a startup, see where it goes. But my wife also worked with a startup at that time. So finally, we decided, like, when we were expecting our kid, so one of us will be in a startup, one of us will not be. And then it was an easier choice for me to just go back to Amazon because I knew the folks, I worked with them, and it also aligned with my, you can say, maybe if uh, I didn't have a ranking in mind, but if startup was one, then maybe moving outside of India was the second one, just to figure out, see how the world is. So it just aligned with my expectations and what I wanted. So
Yeah.
I just
Was there like a clear differences for you in the way it worked out? Because it's startups, you're working with these, and especially you're working at both of these places with celebrity founders over here. And then you're moving into Amazon at the same time. But you moved from a very, working directly with the CEO at both these places, and then coming into now you're working with very senior leadership, but at the same time, it's not the frequency of interactions is not there. So, what was different when you were working with founders and then moving on to a very senior leader management at MNC?
yeah. That's a that's a trick question. But yeah. So I can say this as a difference. So when Flipkart was smaller, again, I did not have like so much of interaction with the founders over there. But yes, I think my the manager who I used to report to, maybe like one level or two levels up, were the founders at that time.
Right.
And but then we had very good leaders who were managing that space. So my interaction has been with them more often than not. So it has been, while I definitely knew, like, hey, this is what the founders are looking for. This is how we are thinking about the next phases of growth, etc. So those you had exposure to, and I had visibility to, like, hey, there are some folks or some investors coming in, so we need this deck to be happening. So that, and at that time, investing was the hot thing, right? So I think that was the yes, that was fun, and the growth as well. It was more oriented towards, to put it in Amazon terms, it was more oriented towards bias for action. While you're thinking like uh, how to build for the long term, you're still trying to take those small steps so that you survive to play the long game. Right? Like, I think survival was most important, and the direction, while it was long termish in nature, I think across the leadership chain, you could potentially see that bias for action to do things. I mean, that's been the experience with startups in both the places. With Amazon, I think from purely like working with the leaders, you could see that balance. Again, being in an MNC gives you that sort of a maybe not a cushion, but some sort of a security to think about, like, how to create that balance between long term and that bias for action. And the way things are structured in Amazon, you have different teams whose charters are slightly different while they work towards the same problem. So you have teams focused on ensuring that you have this, like, for example, in operations, you are running through with it and you have that bias for action to fix things while on the go. Then you have folks and senior leaders maybe taking a step back, looking at it like, hey, what is it sustainable for us to do? Keep doing what we are doing. Like, is this, and a particular question in our teams when we talk internally is like, hey, is this solution something that can sustain the growth of 5 years, 10 years down the line? So I think these questions, we start with those questions, and then figure out like, hey, whether this short term makes sense or not.
Right.
While in Amazon, whereas in the other companies, it was like, yes, we definitely want to survive for 10 years, so let's do what it takes for us to be there. So I think it's a difference in approach. Ultimately, I mean, there's nothing right or wrong. It depends
Yeah.
on the stage of the company. So
No, it was not
Yeah.
about right or wrong. It was more on like very stark differences in your interactions, in your experiences when you were working here, and your conversations must have been very different when you're having with these
True.
founders than you're having conversations here. So
I wouldn't say very different. I think the problem statements, the
Yeah, yeah.
approach was
They
mostly
remain the
the
same,
same.
yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. Like there will be subtle differences you notice where you could just catch up with a founder when you
Yeah.
go into this thing. Like I never ran into Jeff Bezos or someone like that. Right? So, and so yeah, I don't think. But yes, I initially when I moved from, I mean, there's an interesting story. When I moved from Flipkart to Amazon,
Yeah.
I knew like there was a director who
Okay.
might be my skip level or 2 levels
Right.
above.
Right.
I just recognized him from the picture in the internal portal,
Oh, okay.
and then I was like, "Hey, I saw him in that. Like I was just taking my tea, and he walked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's like, "Hey, I think you are Mr. So and so."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's like, "Yeah." Oh, I just joined the team. I just wanted to say hi. So he was also surprised, like maybe that was a first for him or something. So, but yeah, and that was fun because I didn't realize like it was slightly different and maybe MNCs had a different way of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
There is an outside perception that it could be different, or they sit, or it's like, oh, they must be walking in different groups than you're walking.
I don't.
Where,
Yeah.
because when I joined Flipkart, that was my first job, and and I joined in the billion team, which was in Sachin's team itself, and one day the day I joined, it was I think Friday or something after the training onboarding, and they had like a town hall session or whatever where he comes in and he speaks, and then he's sitting, and I was sitting and trying to just grasp on what people were saying. And he was sitting right beside me. So I texted my friend. Oh, do you know who's sitting beside me? Sachin Bansal sitting right beside me. So I don't know, my friend, she was like, take a picture, take a picture, take a picture. And send it. That is weird. I cannot take a picture. She's like, sneak in a picture and then send it. So it was a very weird picture because he was sitting right beside. And I remember she said, and she's like, sneak in, what is he searching on his laptop, what is he? I said, okay, let me just try sneaking in. And I was saying that he was reading Quora on
Nice.
so they were like, oh my god, he's reading Quora, so maybe there is something on to Quora that we should go and so well, coming back to it, let's talk about your other aspects or nuances to like your presentation styles or your communication styles that have changed when you interact with founders, especially, or because the frequency of interactions that you have with them is more often than you have, at these at Amazon. So, has your communication presentation style changed?
It changed. So in startups, like predominantly, I think when you talk about either verbal communication or during the meetings, it was more, you can say it was more ideation, and or to put it simply, it wasn't in writing, it was in PowerPoint or like bullet points,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
things like that. And some of these things you could potentially get away with like not thinking through
Yeah,
quite a
yeah.
lot of it. But when I moved to Amazon, I think that was a stark difference. Amazon has a particular writing style, and Amazon is famous for its documentation in terms of like how you would want those documents, those ideas. And initially, I absolutely was like, hey, what is this? Why should I be writing so many documents? I mean, you start with that because you come from like a very different background. And then over a period of time, I think what I had come to realize is it helps get the thoughts or the clarity, especially when it comes to the execution of complex ideas. So simple ideas, I think you can get away with whatever you want to write, whatever you want to express. But when it comes to understanding the complexities, the nuances. The more you sit, you write that, and you try to make it into a concise idea. And I think there's this famous saying from Mark Twain or some, no, Oliver Wilde.
Okay.
It was like, so he writes a letter to someone, and then he starts with this: "I'm writing a long letter because I didn't have time to shorten it." So it's like that. Like, so once you're clear, typically, I think your ideas or the expression of those ideas in the form of words tend to be shorter.
Yeah.
So you're not clear, you tend to like explain,
Right.
give a lot of context and
Yeah,
all of that,
yeah.
right? I think that sort of idea filtration is something which Amazon taught me, or expression of that idea. Whereas in Flipkart and in all this other, there is no filter. Like you could just rant about things in a meeting, put that one word in a PPT, and then talk whatever you want to. Right? So, but I think both places I'd seen leaders have this sort of an outlook, like even in the startups as well as over here, leaders at different levels, right? Like they know, or they know which questions to ask.
Yeah, they always know what
They
questions.
know what questions to ask. So you, whatever you might end up doing, saying, writing, you still have to answer that question
Yeah.
in one form or the other. I think that's what, I mean, it also comes with experience over a period of time where you learn, like, if you're getting into a meeting, you know what questions you should be answering either in a document or a PowerPoint. So,
They're always very quiet and let you speak and rant through all
yeah.
of it, and then they're like, okay,
Okay.
here's the question. What aspects of, because now you're at Amazon, what aspects of startup do you miss or did you enjoy back then that you've given up at this point? No regrets on this. I'm good.
No regrets. Aspects of working in a startup, I think, as I mentioned, one thing which I liked was running into people at different levels. And I still remember days from Flipkart where, like, maybe the second half of my tenure at Flipkart, where I was able to establish myself, been working with people for some time. So most of the reviews, I didn't have a formal review for my entirety of a single year in terms of either the programs that I was running or anything. So all of them used to be corridor conversations, and maybe there was a monthly meeting where you put like 3 or 4 sentences in a review and say like, hey, this is happening, this is not happening. But yeah, for like almost 1 year, I didn't have a formal review. It was more about me either setting up time just to tell them what I'm doing and things like that. I think that potentially never happened after that. Uh, in Amazon, you have reviews. It's not as frequent as people think it is. Like, hey, there's a weekly review which you definitely have to do something, etc. Especially when you are working with tech teams. But the review mechanisms and some of the cadence that's set up around it, it's followed religiously,
Right.
right? So, uh, I mean, that's something that I miss. Sometimes you're like, oh, and when you finish a review and you're like, oh, if you're handling 2, 3 different programs, oh, there's one more review, okay. So you end up in that cycle sometimes, but I think, yeah, but on the other side, if it were the same startup thing that would have happened, then Amazon would not have been such a big company.
Yeah.
So,
Is there a part of your personal life that you consciously bring into work or career?
part of my personal life.
Because you're into a very career and a work setup, so you become a lot more, there is a wall or there's a boundary that you start creating. Okay, this is how I'm going to operate in this space, right? So but then are there any nuances or elements of your personal life that you consciously you let it flow into your work life and you're like, no, this defines who I am, or this is, I would like to be known for this?
Got it. Again, I don't actively do that, but there are things which I definitely like to keep common, especially the value system which I carry between work and personal life. Like one, I can definitely say like, uh, I mean, I don't know if this is something that comes across as like I'm being so preachy, but I definitely like to think myself as someone who works with integrity, whether like outside or within work. It does not matter, right? Like whether someone sees or not. I tend to do that in personal life as well. Like for example, I was telling you like guitar. I know like there are 10 songs which I can play. I keep playing them because I like playing them,
Yeah.
and I don't do it because I want to do it in a setting or impress people or something. I mean, I know those 10. That's about it. So I think even at work, I tend to get that sort of a thing like, hey, there's work which I need to do, and there are problems which you need to solve. Now, there are multiple teams which can solve that problem. Maybe if there is an opportunity for me to figure out, like, along with the rest of the teams, how to bring those teams along, how to solve that problem, I'll definitely do that. And definitely, I don't go into meetings with an agenda like, hey, this is my problem space. Why are you coming in? This is your problem space. So if I do this now, I'll get your team. I think I don't get into meetings with that sort of an agenda. Even at work, I want to just ensure that your personal integrity is there, and whatever people perceive, they perceive. Right? You can't help it. So,
How does uh, but that's your value system that you're bringing on in
Yeah.
other places, right? That stays the same. That doesn't matter in whatever setting you
Yeah.
end up going. But I can't even think of an example how somebody's personal thing let it flow into their professional. I've come up with an example.
Or maybe I did not understand that well. I did not understand the intention of that question well, maybe.
uh, uh,
You mean like
yeah.
wearing a t-shirt which when I go to
This is something I wanted to ask you about your college experience for your master's, right? Yeah, you graduated from IIM Bangalore, right? So, is there a fundamental moment of your, now that you look back at it, that you describe, or that's how you relate your experience at IIM Bangalore?
Yeah. I think there has been like 2 years. I think there will be a lot of memories and pivotal moment or thing that I carry from
Yeah.
I'm Bangalore days. So I've been the hostel and mess secretary over there. So it was a tenure with like a lot of problems, and you for some reason there is something like someone's shower breaks and some flush doesn't work, so I couldn't receive out there. So yeah, and mess like someone sends you pictures. Oh, this is like too spicy today, and you're dealing with like around some 700, 800 folks,
Yeah.
maybe some folks who feel the most entitled and right, and you have to cater to taste palates of maybe the entire spectrum of India wherever
Yeah.
it starts, right? So it was fun. I think there were like different sets of problems. And if I carry one thing, I think that experience as like the hostel and my secretary, it was fun. Like while it lasted, yeah.
Uh, the like for me it was, I'm not talking about MBA, but it was when I was an undergrad at SRCC. There is a professor. His name is SK Agarwal, and he's a law professor, business law. And he said on the first day of our class, he said, never he told us the story about his friend who gave UPSC multiple times and he failed at it. Then he gave I think some other S's, these exams, and he failed at it. And in the end, he had given the law exam or the Supreme Court exam for being a judge, and then he ended up clearing it, and then he was. So he said something like, you don't know what's meant for you, so don't give up just because you failed a few times
Yeah.
on multiple things, but you keep going and then you're going to get there. And that kind of defined for a lot of us when we were back in college that we're all here. And so you might fail at a couple of other things we all don't have to do, but there's something else carved out for each of us.
Yeah.
So that primarily defined this is what I learned at SRCC, then I would have learned anywhere else, kind of a thing.
Makes sense. I don't know if that's what was the intention of your question. I think I won an award called Sleeping Beauty for sleeping through all the class. I don't know if my professor said any of that, but I
So we
slept through.
we bunked most of it, but it was the first class I still remember where he said, "You don't fail at it."
Yeah. No, I think in that sense, yes, there's quite a lot of. You see quite a lot of failure when you are at masters, and especially in such a competitive environment. And you'll also realize, like, maybe there's a point of time where physics takes over your, like, you can sleep, you can be active in extracurriculars, or you can study.
Yeah.
You can do only two of these three. So you pick and choose what two you want to do. So I mean, that's what I meant by like physics taking over. There are only 24 hours. So you pick and choose what two you want to be doing over there. So yeah, I think it teaches quite a lot about balance. It teaches about failure, especially if you're not in the top rank and then end up with like somewhere average, slightly above average, slightly below average. You end up with that placement thing, which is always a stressful stuff, right? You go through that process, you're like, man, not again. There's another company, oh man, come on. Like, how many times should I be going to this? But yeah, I think that's another experience.
Was there a moment of was there like a learning moment when you moved from operations to moving into product management? And that's again a new shift that you went into, right? So what was your learning moment, and how did you just come back from that? Or did you have a learning moment that was so terribly like you fell from?
Not when I made that transition.
Okay.
I mean, when it comes to making the transition from operations to product, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And that's just because I had that context from operations. But yes, there were quite a number of learning moments like that, especially in my first year when I made that transition. And considering Amazon, like, so there are like n number of systems at the back end which are so intricately connected with one form of the integration or the other.
Yeah.
And when I came from the operations world, so in operations you can see it's a package. It needs to be delivered. So like you get someone, get it delivered. If no one delivers it, like you can hire an Uber, just get it out. You can do a number of things. So when it comes to tech, like it becomes difficult for you to visualize like how can you ensure that that package can go out,
Yeah.
especially if you don't know, like you can call an Uber and send it out, right? So the operations experience helped me think more from an exception standpoint when it comes to product management, and it took me maybe a year or a year and a half to figure out the architectural aspects of it, like how do different systems function, how do different use cases get covered within the same systems, like how do you do exception management from a tech standpoint and not from an operation standpoint. I think it helped. So one thing I also feel like as someone who made the transition from operations into product management, I think there is a sort of misunderstanding on what product management is for a lot of people, where they think either it's something fancy or it's nothing. Like you just have to keep delivering features. I think, according to me, one of the key aspects of being a good product manager is asking the right question, why you want to do this, and figuring out the root cause of where you want to solve a problem. I think that's, and if you're good at both, then maybe the rest of the things will fall in place, like along with like you'll learn about it, architecture or weighing in on some of this tech stuff, I think it will automatically fall in place.
Like, how do you, because now you're leading teams and now you're in this space, were you much better at operations than you were as being a product manager, or vice versa?
One, I'm not leading teams. I'm an individual contributor as a principal, so I just want to make that clear. Good at operations versus product. I think each has its own charm, and I felt it was a good step up for me when I made that transition, because I had that operations experience, and maybe this is where I saw myself as like growing into product management. Like even when I was in operations, I could understand a bit more about tech compared to others, maybe, and I had more interest. Let me put it that way. Maybe I'm good or bad compared to others. I should not say that, but maybe I had more inclination towards the tech side of things. So it felt like a natural progression for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Well, we're at the end of it, and I have my last question that I usually ask. So, if you were given unlimited resources and you had no constraints over financial or otherwise, and so if you could put up a billboard in any part of the world, where would that be, and what would that say?
What would that say about what? Like anything?
It could be anything. It could be a personal thing that it's only for you, so you keep it in Seattle, or it's something. It could be anything. Absolutely, it's your imagination.
I mean, I generally have this catchphrase, which I got it over at the end of the day because that was your question. But I generally like to think of it as like, whatever you do, right? Like, there are always exceptions. So I think you should just believe that. I believe that, like anything, you have a normal distribution, so there's an exception. So whatever you tend to do, whether it's a tech problem you're trying to solve, whether in your personal life when things become hard. So I always believed that phrase. For some reason, I don't know how it came to my head, but it stuck with me like since a very long time. And personally, I believe that, right? Like, I do keep hearing people from like maybe during my MBA as well, like, hey, when the college which I come from is not an IIT or was not an IIT. So at that time, it's like, hey, you're competing with these folks. How will you ensure that you are one step better? How can someone else select you when there's an IIT guy versus someone who is not from an IIT? I was always like, yeah, maybe there's always exceptions. It works out. I don't know. Like, you just have to believe it, right? So, yeah.
So you, okay. That's a nice one.
Yeah.
It's actually a quite nice one. But, well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Again,
my
for
pleasure.
back into it. Love this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate
Cut.
it.
So we got this.